My name is Tim Wilcox. I'm the chair of the Illustrators and Mad Artists Craft in Local 800, the Art Directors Guild. And today we're going to talk a little bit about AI and how it works with us in the union. One of the things that we wanted to do today was not so much talk to you or talk at you. We want you to ask us a lot of questions. So if you have questions for us, there's a microphone over there, and please line up and ask us some questions about it, because it's obviously a complicated issue, especially with an organization like IATSC, because there's so many diverse disciplines from camera, lighting, and for us art. And within our craft, we have four different crafts. We have the art director's craft, which is made up of art directors. We have the scenic, title, and graphic artists, which are the scenics as well as the title graphic and regular graphic artists. We have the set designers and model makers, and besides from Chuck and Nelson here, we have the illustrator's craft, which is mostly what's affected right now by this and its immediacy, and that's storyboard artists and concept and previs. So I'm gonna, what we've done internally is we've created a task force to start studying this, and all of us here on this dais are on the task force. It's made up of the chairs of each craft and 3 other members, as well as Chuck Parker and Nelson Coates. Chuck's our National Executive Director. Nelson Coates is the president of the Guild. So sitting next to Nelson is Stephen Platt, concept illustrator, and at the very end is Fae Corrigan, who is a council member in the IMA craft, and as well as a member of a concept artist and a member of our AI task force. So we kind of thought we'd read you our mission statement on what we're doing in 800, and then I'm going to go down the line and let everybody introduce themselves. So bear with me, I have like a giant light in my face. The ADG AI Task Force is a collaborative effort of ADG members representing all crafts, resolutely devoted to advocating for the livelihoods of Local 800 members. While we recognize the rapid advancements of machine learning, parentheses AI, we are committed to preserving the rights, principles, and discipline of ADG members. These technological advancements do not supersede the jurisdictions outlined in the basic agreement or other guild contracts. Technology does not substitute for the creative, impactful contributions to entertainment brought by our members. We are dedicated to upholding the values that ensure artists receive fair compensation, recognition, and consent for the utilization of their creations. The ADG AI Task Force stands as a bastion of support, empowering our members to harness the potential of emerging technologies while upholding the authenticity of their crafts and safeguarding their professional rights. With that, Chuck, you want to say a couple of words, introduce yourself, and talk a little bit about what your role is in 800 and how this all plays in with you.
Hi there. My name's Chuck Parker. I am the National Executive Director of the Art Directors Guild. I'm formerly a production designer. I was a production designer for about 25 years before my life took this radical turn, in which now, particularly, is this better? Yeah. Now, particularly as this pertains to AI, you should just know me as the resident cop. AI is here. It's being used. I don't believe there's any way we're going to eradicate it from the face of the earth. But if it's used in film and television to create visual imagery, it's going to be done by our members, or I'm going to turn into a cop. And we'll enforce our jurisdiction. That's about all I have to say about it right now. Is there anything else you want?
Well, while you've got the mic, why don't you explain a little about jurisdictions and what that means to someone who doesn't understand what it is?
I mean, our local, out here on the West Coast, there are 13 West Coast studio locals. There used to be more, and some of them were combined into others. And as Tim touched on it, he talked about the 4 different crafts, which years ago used to be 4 different locals. So each craft has its own jurisdiction, and we need to protect that. It's not like there's no interchangeability in the workplace, but we protect that jurisdiction to make sure no one is being cut out of a job. So that's the one thing you want to keep in mind. And so we have a system set in place in the contract to protect our jurisdictions. And when I say I'm a cop, that means I won't pay attention to those jurisdictions, and if they're violated by the employer, we will file grievances and/or go to arbitration. So there's a whole process set up for it, timeframes and whatnot, and that's just what I mean. And when it comes to AI, if someone is using the prompts, it's going to have to be our members. And that's all there is to it. Anything else you wanted to touch on?
I think that's a good start. Nelson?
Hi, I'm Nelson Coates. I'm president of the Art Directors Guild and a production designer of movies like Crazy Rich Asians in the Heights and currently The Morning Show, which is on Apple. I think the important takeaway, no matter what happens today, is you are your product. You are your ideas, you are the sum of your experiences and the training that you have. You're responsible for making you the best product that you can be. And then you bring those ideas to employers. When Chuck is talking about jurisdiction, basically these are contractual things that are set out with studios. Studios negotiate with us, we negotiate with them, trying to come up with the best job situations for the next period of employment, which typically is 3 years. And that covers a whole range of things. It covers meal penalties and breaks and basically all your interactions with a studio. How most everybody has been hearing about the UAW or actor strike or writers. And that same thing happens with the Hollywood Basic Agreement, which is these 13 Hollywood locals. Now, there are other people in the United States that are in IATSE and their contracts happen later, but typically as the studios and the West Coast locals come up with their contracts and get a ratified agreement, the other contracts around the country tend to follow. So we really know that we're trailblazers in each of these areas, and one of those areas that we will obviously be addressing in our next contract cycle, which happens next year, is generative machine learning. So that's partly why you're here. Partly you're here to learn and to become a better content creator, artist, illustrator, whatever your particular craft is, and we're here to help you figure out those goals. But ultimately, I hope your takeaway today is you are responsible for being able to be in a van with a director or with your employer and come up with ideas no matter whether you have technology or not. You are your product, ultimately. And what makes you different than the person you're sitting next to or other people in the convention hall are the ideas that you bring to the table. And they have to be original with you.
May I say something?
Yes.
That originality that Nelson just alluded to does not exist out there. AI can't find that because you haven't birthed it yet.
Well said. My name is Stephen Platt. I am primarily a storyboard artist. I do concept on occasion. I also work for Marvel and DC doing comic books. So I've been a storyboard artist since 2001. I've been in the union since 2007. Seen a lot of changes. Obviously, I agree completely with Chuck. AI isn't going anywhere. It's a transformative technology, but like any other transformative technology in history, it is definitely in need of guardrails. It's in need of heavy regulation. It's in need of protection, and it's definitely in need of legislation that vigorously protects American labor, and that is and that's human artists like you. One of the things, and I spoke to Nelson about this previously, is when you walk into LightBox, LightBox is an astonishing collection of creatives. And when you have this kind of convergence, you also have a convergence of technology companies that come here and say, hey, we make products that help artists make art. You know who's not here? AI is not here. Stable's not here. Midjourney's not here because they don't make products for you. They're not making products that make art. They want to make products that make images, and that is not the same thing as being an artist. And I think those are really critical delineations as we move forward.
Thank you, Stephen. Fae?
Hello, I am Fae Corrigan. I'm all of those things. One of the reasons I'm at this table is I am very heavily on the technology side. So I live in the world of Unreal Video Game Engine, and I write software for Unreal Video Game Engine and all of these other things. And I work on very large movies that are a bit of a bear sometimes. The newest one is The Marvels that's coming out next month, I think. Yeah, we've had some very good points here so far. And I don't know, I kind of want to go into this conversation as more of what are you all going to bring to the table? What questions do you have? And I will attempt to answer them the best way I can.
Fair enough. Actually, I want to touch on a couple of things. You know, one of the things that we hear sometimes within our own ranks, especially non-illustrators, and they're like, how's this just not like pulling images and collaging something together? And I'd like to see that answered. Somebody put their hand up and take that from a production design standpoint and possibly from an illustrator standpoint. How is this not collaging images together?
Years ago, when the internet popped in and you started searching for things, there was only a finite amount of the world's knowledge that was even on the internet. And as we are even today, the majority of books that have been published are not online. The majority of visuals that people have created are not online. So when I start a movie, one of the places that I go to are those physical, tangible resources like Room 100 in the Public Library in New York that has one of the largest tear sheet collections in the world, and you can source through things that have never been scanned and you would never find. Whether it's the ADG archives that we have, or the Academy, or you're in New Orleans in the New Orleans Historic Collection, you're finding works of art, you're finding like salient things that can make your story and your whole through line that you're creating unique. And I think that's what all of us want to ascribe to do, is create a unique piece of art, whether it is a story, whether it is a still frame, whatever that is, we want it to be unique in the world. And so when I'm prepping, I'm just resourcing like crazy, but it is me driving the resourcing as opposed to something being spit back out to me. I'm doing the work. I'm pulling from my driving around a city and seeing little details and bringing those foods and those fabrics and those things that are so unique and putting them together in a way that has never been put together before, and creating an experience for audiences that literally is from my brain and my team's brain. And I love amassing a team. And I think when I'm hired for my instincts, and I'm hired for the people that I can draw to a project that are going to add amazing things. That human quality cannot be brought about by prompting. It just doesn't happen. And so I think we're actually, instead of creating stronger ideas, we're dumbing things down when we're relying on somebody else's work, as opposed to actually digging and finding the unique things and not being lazy, finding the really exciting, salient things that have never been seen or put together before.
Yeah, Nelson has a really good point there that I'm going to build off of, actually. So one of the things about when you're going through and you're doing a collage is that there's a human hand in every single aspect of, hey, I'm pulling this image, hey, I'm pulling this image. All of these generative image creators are a black box on what the inputs are. And if you're scraping a large enough data set, it's going to push toward the mean of society, what society thinks is the mean at the very least. So that is a particular look, and is very frequently couched in a lot of really unfortunate things. Racism, sexism, homophobia, all that jazz. So if you have a human hand in the process the whole way through, that human is at least somewhat mitigating that. All of these AI companies are going to be coming out at some point soon, if they have not already, ways to tell what the inputs are. The reality of the technology is you can get an AI to tell you blatant lies about what the inputs are and what its biases are. So it can give you a really convincing reason as to why this image isn't racist or anything in that realm. But it can still be racist. Like, they're very good at telling you lies. If any of you have done any of the problems with hallucinations with AI, where it'll start telling you things very confidently, do you want that in your images that you're generating? Do you want biases that are not part of your own personal worldview? Just the soup of society around us, all of the biases that exist in the soup of the world around us, in the work that you're producing without your intention? It's kind of disgusting, honestly.
In our conversations next door before we came in here, one of the things that we were discussing was ownership. And you guys may not know this, but we don't own any of this work. We are what's called work for hire. We can use it to promote ourselves, but we cannot claim ownership to it, monetize it, or anything like that. So I'd like to talk a little bit about how that throws kind of a monkey wrench in using this when things like Midjourney have, well, Faye, you want to kick off and then go to Stephen on this?
Has anyone been disappointed with a movie like a Marvel movie for being really derivative and it's just sort of, oh, it's the same story over and over again? Yeah, that's what this creates. It's just rehashing the past existence. And one of the things that is going to happen at some point, potentially, is the studios are going to be taking their catalogs of things and training things off their catalog. So you're not getting any new ideas, you're not getting any new viewpoints, you're just getting Marvel soup from the past 40 movies that Marvel have created, and then that generates a new movie. And that doesn't move anything forward, and that doesn't say anything new. And honestly, if you don't have a human hand in that process, it's just creating something that looks like a Marvel movie without any of the heart.
Yeah, and my point with this was, if you use any of these tools, in air quotes, they have ownership over your prompts. So technically you cannot use them if you're under contract for a studio that's supposed to own something.
I am seeing, not personally, but I have seen, I've talked to friends that are working in media projects right now, and they are definitely starting to see a very specific paragraphs in their legal work agreements to basically specifically mentioning AI, and then mentions all of the generative image companies saying you can't use this, and anyone caught using this will be subject to termination and all the rest of it. So the media companies are catching up. With regards to what's been mentioned here prior, you know, specifically because of LightBox, or specifically because of, with regards to what these generative models do, we want, it is about, do you want to actually learn how to do the thing, or do you want a machine to do it for you? And then you actually don't know if it's doing it right or doing it wrong, because you don't know how to do it yourself. And I think there is a danger in relying on a generative image model that continues to produce images which you are not trained to discern whether or not the image is poor quality or high quality, or if there was a genius phrase that someone was using in one of the threads I've been on. They call it the art casino. You're just there, like, is it right? Is it right? Is it right? And you've got like 500 images, and now because you haven't trained, you haven't done the hard work to train yourself to be an artist, you don't know if anything's good or bad. And there's a real danger, an inherent danger in having a machine take over your own artistic pursuit and you not learning the craft yourself. It is incredibly self-destructive. So I would, because it's LightBox and because so many of you here are here aspirationally, you may be pre-career, you may be students, I want you to really think about that. You need to learn how to do this first before you can use any tool effectively.
One of the things...
And to piggyback on that, if you don't mind, is that one of the things that all of us do on this dais and all of us in this room that work in the industry is everything we do has to be able to get shot. And I don't think a prompt is going to know where the camera is going to go, and it doesn't know what wall needs to be wilded out, and it doesn't need to know all the myriad of things that we need to know. So that piggybacks on what Steven's talking about on that. And Faye's next, and then you, Nelson. She had her hand up first.
Yeah, I mean, half my job is problem solving for other people. I make pretty pictures, but the reason I make pretty pictures is I can also figure out why things work. I want to jump back to the earlier conversation about all of these terms of service and stuff. I read terms of service. They are fascinating. Every single one of these generators that I have used, because I play with them just to see what the technology does, they can use the work that I upload to them for training. They can use to improve their models, improve their service. So when you upload something to them, oh hey, my next idea for the next giant Marvel movie, well, OpenAI now owns that too, which is a huge problem. I can't copyright it, but now they own the right to create images based off the images I uploaded. Huge problem for us, huge problem for the studios. Also, if you've been around any time in the past few years, the number of cloud services that have been hacked, Adobe is not immune to this either. Adobe's a Firefly AI where you can upload things to Firefly. What happens when that gets hacked and all of the images that you generated for a particular show are leaked onto the internet? That's a huge problem for the studios. So it's a huge legal concern for the studios that I don't think that has been really brought into the public yet, and it's going to blindside a lot of people when things like that North Korean dictator movie where it came out 6 months too early and it was a huge deal and the studios and Sony was all caught up about it, that'll keep happening. Because venture capital companies don't care and they're designed to collapse. And when they collapse, what happens?
One of the things that I've found throughout a career, when you're doing research, when you're doing a period movie, let's say, there may be things that existed or are correct for a year, but actually aren't correct for your story. One quick case in point, doing On the Basis of Sex about Justice Ginsburg, the movie takes place from 1946 to 1973, and just as a safety, I told my crew, we're just going to use rotary phones. And I'm in Montreal with a crew that English was not their first language on the particular crew that I had, and they didn't know Justice Ginsburg, they'd not been to New York, etc. But I just assume when you're doing period, you're going to a foreign country, basically. Even though it may be your country, you're going back in time and it's different. And so you have to create whatever rules that you're going to be working from. And the reason I wanted only rotary phones was that there would be no mistake. And yes, push-button phones were invented, but the systems and the wiring wasn't in place in the United States. So you give a prompt out that, you know, you're doing some sort of image, and a phone could be push-button, but they actually weren't in use yet in the period of time that was in our movie, even though they had been invented. So as a storyteller, I have to know everything. In fact, I have to know more than my director. I have to know more than my producers. I've got to be the expert on whatever that subject matter is and know all of those rules and help create and get everybody on board with that. And when you're leaving that up to chance and doing the slot machine of imagery, you have no control over that. And you're actually being lazy and not doing the work yourself about all that infinitesimal detail. Yes, your piece of art can be framed and can be one element. When I'm designing a movie, the camera can zoom in on anything, and so everything I provide has to be correct. And I have to know where it came from, because if somebody from the studio says, is that correct, or where did that poster come from, or all of those elements, I have to know every bit of it. And if I'm leaving it up to chance, I'm really putting myself in peril. And that means I'm putting the continuation of my career in peril. And I'm not willing to do that. I want my work to be at a top shelf that's above anybody else. And the only way I'm going to be doing that is if I'm doing the research, and I know where every element comes from in my shows.
So I have a question for the room. How many of you are wanting to get into the business and are here to learn? Show of hands.
Raise your hands high so we can
Yeah.
see through this light.
Okay, that's what I was hoping for. So you need to be asking us some questions while we're here, like how do you navigate this as an artist that's trying to get to it? You need to go to the microphone if you don't mind. So if you guys have questions, please start lining up at the mic.
Pick this up, or do you just leave it here?
It works. It's up to you.
Okay.
What's your name?
Dana Lee. Do you think artists should be pessimistic about AI in general? Like, do you think it's like all doomed, or do you think we should just generally approach it with caution and remain skeptical? It's not going to burn the entire industry to the ground.
I have one point of view about this, and if the employer likes it, yeah, you should be skeptical.
Anybody else?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Oh, it's basically, do you think artists should be pessimistic or optimistic about AI, like, potentially removing a lot of jobs for artists?
I think right now, AI, specifically in the image generator, because I'm a storyboard artist and I have been harassing all of my very busy storyboard friends who work in the business. I've been asking them, have you seen a storyboard program or anything, a storyboard AI product that is able to produce an actual storyboard of like a complex scene, or in a shot with real shot language that you can hand to other departments and inform an entire production about what we're doing for the day? And to the one, and I asked about 15, to the one, no one has seen anything because it's incredibly difficult, right? So it really depends on where you are in the art department. So the storyboard artists presently, and this is just, in today, right, are less concerned because it's such a difficult job to do and it's incredibly abstract because it's filmmaking.
Specific. Yeah.
It's super specific, and if you and it's a big joke in directing. Like if you give 10 directors the same script, you're going to get 10 utterly different films, and that is entirely the case with storyboarding. So it's very, very difficult for an AI to know exactly how to shoot out a movie unless you're talking specifically to the other human being, which is a director. And so that human interface. I don't see AI approaching it anytime soon. However, there's a lot of my friends who are in the concept design business that are very concerned because the generative AI technology product right now, when I say product because they're making money off this, they're selling this, right? This is a subscription-based commercial concern. They are definitely more concerned and more worried because this thing produces finished illustrations, right, that mimic concept art. They are not, the AI doesn't problem solve. And that's why I keep coming, I'm going to circle back to this. You need to be a problem solver to be a real designer. Concept designers design. They don't just illustrate. The illustration is the vessel to explain the problem that is being solved. It is not the point of the illustration. Where you run into a danger, and this has often been perceived as an existential danger, is that there is a perception that if you fill up art department with illustrations, that you are now getting an enormous amount of value from massive amounts of illustration, but it's taking longer to solve the problem because there's more illustrations being done and less problem-solving designs being done. So I think these are the issues, and I think, I'll let Fae talk about the concept part of it, but that's I don't know if I've answered your question, but I think it is something to be concerned about if you're in the concept game.
Okay.
I have huge amounts of pessimism and all sorts of other things we could talk about later, doom and gloom. I want to throw a little bit of optimism in here. I'm sure most of us, if not all of us, have... Hello? Okay. I'm sure that most of us, if not all of us, have I've been following what's been happening with the writers and the actors and the public swing toward artists. So my optimism is if that swing continues, we've been having huge issues with the value of art being diminished in our society over time. And I see this as a potential if society keeps moving in the direction of a lot of very loud people who are art for humans by humans. Like, if we move in that direction, that is a very good future. We've been having this issue with, like, everything is content these days, and content is this primordial soup of nothing, not saying anything, but it keeps people's eyes glued to a television for hours, so I guess it works. I've seen a lot more people talking about what is actual art, and how do you get to that, and how do you make sure that it's made by a person and not made by a corporation. Like, I don't know, corporate art is kind of boring.
Well, and to tag onto that, I do a lot of poster work on the side for an agency, and everything that we've been working on are all sequels. There's nothing original. It's all sequels.
Okay, so first of all, do you guys have anyone who's advocating on the other side within your organization? A little bit more pro-AI?
I don't think you're going to find that here, but
I think you're going to be hard-pressed to find that with anyone in the crafts that are covered by the basic agreement in film, because we want our work to be the best in the world, and I don't want it to be a soup from other people's work. I want it to be original, and so why would I dumb down and advocate for something where I don't know the origin. I'm just who knows what I'm going to get. It's basically, I think, lazy work. That doesn't mean it's it's a technology that can't be helpful for some industries, but when it comes down to image work and owning those images and creating those unique things, if you're getting rid of the grating background sound on a recording, you can train generative or an AI, you can train to get rid of some of that noise so that you can get back to an old recording and hear what someone's saying. But you're still getting that original voice of a person. For me to not have original works and images, I'm not interested in doing that. I'm interested in a creative team bouncing off ideas off of real people and getting their life experiences and showing those on screen in a way that have never been seen before, and that doesn't work.
What about the art of process design and the aspect of coming up with a process? So whether you're training a team or coming up with like certain actions or a pipeline specifically. So if you're creating a pipeline at a studio, that's an artistic process. You're utilizing computers and various apps along the way. And when you're piecing together almost like an assembly line to do anything from going from department to department and so on, and instead of having a secretary run back and forth, instead of having an artist hand color, we use Photoshop every day, we use tools every day. Isn't there an aspect of artistry in that process and building a process and finding shortcuts and things like that while still having a discerning artistic eye and guiding the direction that the computers are helping you with?
Generative AI is not Photoshop or Illustrator. It's not.
No.
It's not real. That is a human hand involved in all of it, which is why that it passes copyright, because a human is using those, and those are tools. I don't consider AI to be a tool.
Okay.
yeah, actually, I'll interrupt for a second. My analogy with that I've been using is you can go to Home Depot and buy a hammer, and it's going to do 3 jobs. It's going to put a nail in, it's going to remove a nail, or it's going to break your thumb. You don't put it up to your mouth and say, build me a house.
Okay.
On the other hand, when I say that I'm going to police this world, if I were young and starting out, I would learn it. Because when I claim that if it's going to be done, the prompting has to be done by our members. So it's a double-edged sword, or as Adrian Monk used to say, it's a gift and a curse. But it's something that has to be handled, and I wouldn't want to be left standing on the platform when the train leaves the station. This is here. It's how are we going to deal with it?
And if you're going to be having to react to an employer and say, here's the genesis of this. I don't know how many of you all saw Working Girl way back in the day, and there's an elevator moment where Melanie Griffith is asked how she knew, where did you make the connection? And she knew where she had made the connection. If you don't know where it comes from, how can you talk to your director and say, this is the reason why this is great, and here's where it comes from, because you don't have any basis of knowledge.
I want to jump in with a quick clarification here. Machine learning and AI have been around for a very long time. And the specific thing that this panel is responding to and the artists and art department are not necessarily data analysis, not necessarily some of the things like the flame generators in Elemental, where it is a thing that is being used to achieve a creative vision, is the replacement of art that we're going after, specifically. If you want to talk more, I can talk more after this.
I would like to add something. I was looking, that's why I was on my phone. I was paying attention. I was looking for a quote. This is a quote by Imad Mastaq, the founder of Stable Diffusion, on his views on arts and art department. My message to artists would be, illustration design jobs are very tedious. It's not about being artistic. You are a tool. It's the founder, that's the people who make these products, that's what they think of you. That's how they perceive you. So understand, if you're going to use their tools, understand what you're feeding. Okay? Understand who you are supporting and understand the philosophy behind the products that you are using. If you're going to use these things, understand who you're in the room with. It's really important.
Next up.
I just wanted to add that.
Thanks, Stephen.
Hi, I'm a graphic designer. I am not in the industry yet. I'm coming over from nonprofit, which is a whole other thing. And I'm already seeing people in other industries using AI to take away graphic designer jobs. So instead of making a poster, they're going into AI and creating a flyer or a poster or advertising or whatever they need. So I'm already seeing it take away like content and opportunity. In this industry specifically, I'm wondering if you expect the studios to start creating their own AI developing product so that they own what's created, but it belongs to the studio, but it's studio generated, essentially.
Well, they'd have a problem right now because they have contracts and they have to work within jurisdictional contracts. And so if all of a sudden someone were to be generating from a studio side, a PA doing prompting and doing whatever, they're breaking the contracts. And so, do I want to work with people who are not people of their word? I mean, that's really what it comes down to. We have a working relationship for a period of time with a contract, and then we'll negotiate a new one. Those are the rules of the road. And so you actually can't go beyond that. Those are our rules. Those are our guard rails, how we're
And if the studio comes to you and says, we've created this program, we want the people working with us to work with this program. Like, we want you to work in Illustrator, Photoshop, we want you to work in this program.
We, to date, we've not had to deal with that yet, but we'll be negotiating next spring. And as AI has been a very vibrant topic in both the Writers Guild, the Directors Guild, and SAG-AFTRA negotiations, this is one of the reasons we have the task force, and the IA has a task force. So we're taking a defensive position about this, about being prepared. But I will still say our jurisdiction stands. The descriptions of our jurisdictions are quite loose, we'll say, and it allows for this. So I would be content and I would be very confident walking into any arbitration to defend our jurisdiction in this.
Thank you.
To your point about software, when I became chair of the craft, there was a tendency to use it as a special skill, which is one of the ways that you can get around hiring somebody on what's called our availability list. And the way I fought back was I just asked them what brand of brushes they used and what kind of vellum they used and what kind of pencils they used. And it kind of put a stop to it. So everything generates stuff that we can use. We shouldn't be driven by software. Faye.
If you look at the wording that the WGA has released about the points that they successfully negotiated with the studios, it specifically says in there that writers cannot be required to use GAI as the source. So,
and when it comes down to it, you should be hired for your instincts and for your creativity, not for the car you own or the computer software or, that's not what I'm being hired for. I'm being hired for my ideas and those skills. I should be able to do that in a conversation and come up with new ideas like this, whether I am using a pencil and a pad or whether I'm using, whatever. But they're not hiring my computer; they're hiring me.
If you remember anything from this meeting, remember this: tools do not a carpenter make. Doesn't matter what you're using. It's up here.
Next up.
Awesome. Hi, I'm Pete. I'm just an IT guy. I want to shout out Faye for bringing the doom and gloom because I think we need more of it. We know next November 30th is ChatGPT's anniversary, so it's coming. All that to say, I feel like everybody in here wants their cake and wants to eat it too. We've all probably tried Grammarly. We've all probably tried like Google Autocomplete. We've all probably tried Copilot and VS Code. So how do we have our cake and eat it too, from the boring rigging to the autocomplete stuff, or to just new artists that say, hey, I'm an amazing storyboard person, but I have no idea how to generate a score for this, so I'm gonna have a robot do it. Can you all speak to that a little bit?
Well, there's one thing about like storyboards. I think Stephen brought it out perfectly. We're, as a production designer, storyboard artist, concept illustrator, what we're doing is so different than just making a piece of art. We're solving problems and telling stories. I've worked on shows in my career where the storyboard artist, and these were non-union shows because our union people are at a real amazing level of problem solving, where you couldn't actually film the sequences that were drawn. They were just pictures, but they were not filmmaking solutions. How does that lens change what you can see? How does the camera move? Where are the actors going? It's three-dimensional space being expressed in a map, basically. And so I've not yet either seen any program that could solve those problems, that could sit with a director and go, well, I was thinking I really need to punch into the eyes right here, but I've got a whip pan and catch this other little piece of action. It doesn't happen except with somebody working out those minute details. So it's not a sky is falling thing. It's like, who wants to have a non-complete something when you have these amazing brains that have experience that can bring you stuff?
This is, it's important because the storyboard artist is describing sequences, they're not static images. And they're solving problems for the crew. How are we going to shoot? What are we going to be looking at? What needs to be prepared? What are our directions?
Yeah, to an earlier point that I brought up, using a machine learning algorithm to rig something is very different than using machine learning algorithm to create a character. They're two sort of separate things. One of the problems we have in this whole discussion is the broad use of technology. AI is such a broad term. It covers everything from, hey, when I'm typing, it underlines the words that I have misspelled, all the way to, hey, it created this character for me which has no human input in it. These are very different things, and finding the line between that is a very murky situation. But yeah, it is, there's a difference. Some artificial intelligence things I feel can be considered tools. Some are the direct replacement of an artist.
And there's certain things, especially in the design of film and television, where you're designing three-dimensional space that have all sorts of character things that will help enhance an actor's performance, whether it's letters, on the table or little objects that they're playing with during a scene. All of those things are elevating the verisimilitude of what is going on. And it's not just throwing a background of New York behind them and they're not interacting with something. It is actually making three-dimensional space that then can break away so cameras can get shots, and you have to know how things collapse and how things could catch on fire, or all of the various things you're needed for the story to make it super specific. And so you really can't just make a generative AI set, because the actors can't involve and can't be improvisational. It just is. It's really super challenging. I mean, even in the Unreal environments, you're building physical things that the actors are interacting with, even as you're parallaxing the environments behind them.
Stephen, did you want to comment?
Did I want to come up?
Comment.
Oh, no. I was just listening.
You had your mic up.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm holding it.
You just like.
I like holding my mic.
Am I cool too? Oh.
You're up. Just so you guys know, we have about 12 minutes left.
Yes. So I just wanted to ask that, since usually studios and executives, they want to lower costs as much as they can, and outsourcing is very popular in the animation industry already. There are barely any 2D animators, 2D studios anymore. So I'm just wondering, do you think studios will start, oh, you don't want to work with AI? Well, we're going to start outsourcing.
Preferential hiring.
Yeah, to lower costs, which is horrible.
It's
an excellent question.
I can tell you one way you can reduce costs: you hire fewer, more excellent trained people.
Yeah.
I'd rather have a small crew that is awesome and just on fire with their ideas and how to accomplish things than to have a humongous crew, because they're going to come up with real solutions that can save you money. So you become the person that they need to hire. That's what all of this is for all of you at this conference, and as you're coming into the career, be the person that they can't do the show without, and nothing can compete with that.
To follow up to that question, when you guys renew your contract, are you gonna be keeping that in mind? Is there anything that you can add as a defense in your contract that is sorry, I'm taking a legal class, I'm just legal brain.
These are really good questions.
Is there, because I feel that's something that you want to look out for so that studios don't, I'm sure you know, but you don't, because AI art is not copyrightable because it's not an expressive work made by a human being. So we're good there, but then it's oh, what if they outsource?
What's your question?
So are you guys planning to put that in your contract renewal, a protection against
of course.
Outsourcing for AI?
Of course we are.
Well, that's great. Thank you.
That's part of the AI task force that has been going on, is preparing proposals for negotiations.
Yeah, that's all I wanted to know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Sam.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sam Tong. I'm a senior illustrator. I'm not here to cause trouble. My name is Sam Tong. I'm a senior illustrator with our Directors Guild. I also work in Animation Guild. And I think a lot of what you guys have said has really resonated with all of us, that we all really want to do good work and master our crafts. I guess my question is, we've all worked jobs where not everybody wants to be doing great work. And if I'm on a job where perhaps I'm handed something that came out of Midjourney and told to work with that, maybe by somebody in the art department, maybe by a director or the director's assistant, what advice would you give to they're pushing back against that on the spot, or broader, what kind of things or recourse do we have if I show up and they're here's a bunch of Midjourney, go fix it, or these are half of the storyboards, so your job is, you have half as long to do it. Get back to me on Friday, right?
It's a great question.
You hit the nail on the head with that question. If anybody in here is a member and you're working on a show and a director hands you something that they've done using IA, in my book, AI, there's no difference than a book with tear sheets. But if you find out that they have instructed a PA to do it, we'd like to know about it, and we'd like to know about it immediately. That's from either a producer or a director. And that's when I say we look at this jurisdictionally right now.
So for those of you who are moving into your careers or early in your careers, that's one of the values of unionism and the Art Directors Guild, is that you have a team of folks who are looking they've either experienced the same things, or we're looking to protect the jurisdictions, we're looking to support you so that you're not having to be in those positions by yourself. Because by yourself, you can get railroaded pretty quickly, but if you have a whole group of people going, here's an answer, here's how to proceed, we're there to hold your back.
And in that situation, realize that I'm not dealing with the producers. I don't deal with producers. It's called direct dealing, and I get my hands slapped. I deal with labor relations or a business,
which is
or legal business.
That's all the way to the studio level.
So it takes it off of your back.
Thanks, Sam.
Hi, funny enough, my name is Sam too. And I'm glad that we're touching on this because my question was very similar. I'm a working art department assistant. So I was wondering what resources or protections, as someone who works very closely with your membership, could be doing other than just like, don't do it. Like, what is out there to protect ourselves as PAs in art department?
And you're protecting, give it a little more.
I don't want to use AI, or if someone comes up to me and they're like, oh, you're a PA, maybe there's a loophole, like, do it. Other than me being like, no, I don't want to work with that. Like, what other actions can I do to protect myself?
Well, you have to protect your job. Okay, so you can't really refuse to do it. We always say you don't want to be fired for insubordination, but you need to document everything and let the people who you work for that are members of our organization know this. And then that's when we'll step in. Is that helpful?
Yeah, no, that's
Especially, this is if you're working on a union show, under a union jurisdiction. That's, if you're on a non-union project, we have no management over someone doing that. But where we can step in and help you is when it's in those union situations.
Awesome, thanks.
Thank you. Next. And we are down to about 8 minutes.
Hi. So, kind of blazing off the trails of...
Can you get closer to the mic, please?
Is this good?
Yeah.
Okay. So kind of like blazing off the trails of the last question about refusing to use AI. So like, what would kind of be like a good way to boycott not using AI? Because like, I was like listening on Spotify once and I found this one album and then I was like, wait, this album cover was used making AI, and I was only able to tell that because one of the controllers, like a video game controller on the thing, had like 5 directions on it. And so like, there was no intelligence in that. But would that be like a good way to like boycott, like even associating yourself with AI and artificial intelligence and stuff like that?
It comes down to educating yourself, educating the people around you. If you're having the conversations with people around you, and educating the public at large. I know there have been a lot of pushback on a lot of YouTube videos, a lot of artists who use AI in their work, and it's been a public outsurge against that. So that is sort of the direction you go. If you're working on a union show, again, you can do the work. You should do the work, otherwise you are liable to be fired. But if it's covered work, if you are producing an illustration using the software as a non-illustrator, then that can get them in trouble from the people above them, because the studios don't want to break their contract. They get in a lot of trouble, and they will necessarily or potentially get rid of the people who are the low-hanging fruit, so in this case, potentially a producer.
Okay, also I have like one more thing to say. So like I found this like brochure about like not using AI, and I'm gonna hang it up on my wall. Just I just wanted to say that.
And if you're...
Hi.
What happened? Are we being cut? We're cutting our mics?
My mic seems to have not worked.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, hi. I'm Chad. I'm a board artist with TAG. So thank you all for leading the charge on this. This is great. My specific question is about text to video, and specifically how 'cause that seems like a problem area, not just for I guess people who create art that gets produced, but also for other IATSE unions that are set designers and other parts of the production. So how do you guys know anything, or what are your thoughts about how that could affect other IATSE guilds and unions, even past that, with all the technology rapidly advancing like it is?
Well, I know if you're talking about Runway, something like Runway, Gen 1, Gen 2,
right, yeah.
Something like Runway, which is now able to produce an 18-second clip. I'm sure it will be able to produce a 32-second clip very soon. They're certainly not moving at the same speed as the internet. AI is a space that's moving faster than anything in history. So at some point, will we see full-fledged, commercials that were basically produced internally by an agency and an AI technology company, and they're just interfaced together, and there were no physical humans involved other than the art direction and maybe people doing copy or agency people? I think that's a probability simply because of what I've seen already. I know in Japan there's already AI commercials on television. I know, when I start reading about AI in the public space, I'm always seeing advocacies for labeling it as AI, like this is an AI-produced commercial. I know, in terms of long-form narrative, again, it goes back to the thing that we've all been talking about. Just plugging in a script and having it produce, something that's good. I think that is something that I don't want to be predictive and say that it's happening or it's not happening, simply because the space is moving so fast. I'll just be wrong, right? I can't be right. So, but are you talking about the eventuality of just non-human filmmaking, where it's just product? There's a half-hour animated show being produced just by prompting?
Right. I guess more specifically, even with advances with LED wall technology, using Unreal Engine and stuff like that, that stuff still is curated by an artist that's set up, right. And it's we're getting dangers with the text to video specifically. I kind of feel like they can jump the hurdle on certain things if we let it, I guess, right?
Yeah. Just as specific as anything.
We combat that by supporting our sister crafts and just generally education in the public. If the public does not want this in front of them, then it's a lot less likely to happen. The reason that there's this race to the bottom on all of these technologies is because it's financially viable. Once it's no longer financially viable, it's a much smaller problem. Capitalism is a mess.
Yeah. Awesome. Great.
It's an excellent question. I think what Fae said is really important. At the end of the day, when you have these huge technology shifts that's going to shift the entire civilization, you do have an emergence of a value system. And what's the value system say? Human beings say, I like this, or I reject this. I don't like this, right? It's what are you all willing as consumers to say, yeah, I want a half-hour runway show on Netflix, and it's really good, or if it's really bad. It's you guys are actually going to be the ones that decide. Consumers are going to be the ones that decide whether or not something has legs or not, and that goes for the AI long-form narrative as well.
I have a two-frame little cartoon that I've had for 30 years, and the first frame has a guy and his veins are just sticking out, and he's in a suit, and he's obviously an employer screaming, faster, faster, cheaper, cheaper. And then the next frame has him looking through the film and go, hey, why does this look like crap?
Fair enough. Awesome, thank you.
We've got to go ahead to get the last two questions so that nobody gets cut off.
Thank you. Andres Parada, thanks for coming here. My question is specific to Nelson and Chuck. It seems, I'm a member of IMA since 2019. It seems that now we're speaking in unison that we're against the AI mostly and humans are so much better and so forth. But it looks to me that ADG is divided. We have a house divided. I've spoken with many production designers and art directors that are very pro-AI. For me, it's a deep concern. What assurance do I have from you two in leadership that the 400 of us in IMA will be protected and that we will not be swallowed up by the bigger group of 2,000 where many are for AI? I've also spoken to production designers that are against, but I've spoken to more that are for it because they see their budgets becoming smaller, they can create more. So what assurance, my question is, what assurance do I have in my minority craft that I will be protected and not be swallowed up by the big ones? Is that question clear enough?
Like we have said, and thank you, Luca.
I'm not Luca, Andres.
No, well,
he's much more good looking than me, but thank you.
I couldn't tell the difference.
Luca, can you stand up, please? Say.
Oh, there he is.
I love you.
There is so much that goes on, and if we're not notified about some of it, there's nothing we can do about it.
When we are notifying you, but the question wasn't about being notified. The question was, what do we do when so many within our own house are for it? What assurance do we have that are against it? Because we're the ones that are in an existential threat right now.
I think part of this is about education within our own house and inwardly facing and outwardly facing, that union should mean something. If you are allowing your sisters or brothers or kin to be threatened in their craft, you're basically threatening your own existence. And I think driving that home, and that's part of what the AI task force is working on, is how do we best educate within ourselves that we shouldn't all be doing this race to zero. Where's the I was walking on I was scouting for a show, and the producer constantly was saying, so how much is that going to cost? Where are we going to do whatever? And the cinematographer looked over and said, where are the conversations about how do we make it better? Yep. Every conversation has been, how do we make it cheaper? Let's not worry about that. Let's worry about doing good work. And I think so many people have felt the pressure coming from the employer to do things faster and cheaper, and they want to work again, and they want to be the savior, that they're just reactionary as opposed to looking at what the long-term effects of that's going to be. And I think it's super important that we educate inward and outward that if your contract is to mean anything to you as a production designer and art director, you have to enforce the contracts of our sisters, brethren, and kin in our own organization just as much. Or how can we help you with yours?
Thank you.
Last
thank
one
you
of the
so
day.
much for holding this panel. I've been so excited to hear all of the AI panels this weekend. Honestly, I'm probably kind of what you would consider the bad guy. I don't work on AI, but I do work in the tech space, and I really want to do my part in kind of driving things to work well for humans and support actual human artists. So I have kind of two questions for you, but they'll probably be quick. The first one is, what are some big wins that you guys have had recently to protect everybody in the industry? And the other question I have is, what coordination are you doing with people who are working in the tech space on these tools to get an understanding of what is coming? Because you mentioned something about like AI currently can't do certain things, or they're not problem solving or what have you, but like in the past 5 years, we went from 0 to 100, and it's literally not stopping. There are so many people who are super hungry distributed across the world working on this. It's kind of scary to think about what's going to happen in the next 5 years.
I can tell you that when ChatGPT-4 came out, it took 2 days for it to accumulate 100 million monthly users. Whereas the preceding one, ChatGPT-3, in November of last year came out, well, it only took it 2 weeks. but that's how fast it's coming about. I have no idea how to stem the tide. I have no idea at all. What we will use is what our contractually guaranteed jurisdictions give us. And that's the only thing we can do. And now I'm beginning to realize why they lack such specificity, thankfully.
So in the plus category is the Directors Guild contract says all work has to be done by humans and AI is not a human. So that is in their contract language. That's the first time AI has appeared in any employer, any studio contract with any of the guilds at all. Then, of course, the writers just got in their contract that no one can tell them what they can or must use as a tool, and that if they chose to use an AI product of any sort, it would be at their own discretion, but that they have management over it. So those are the first two times that AI has appeared in any contract. Their issues are not our issues, but it is very beneficial for us that already we're getting AI into contracts. And of course, as we go into ours, this task force is working on language and things that we can present to the employer.
We're getting the hook. So Stephen and then Faye, and we may not get to your second question. I'm sorry.
Just the word education has been used a lot in this discussion. I think that's an ongoing part of how we address AI moving into the future. You know, and in doing that, that becomes an advocacy that goes beyond the union. I'm going to Washington, D.C. to talk to members of Congress in 3 weeks, not as a union representative, but just as myself as a creative professional, to talk about AI and how it affects the field of creativity in the American artistic endeavor. And I think that, like I said, and I opened with this, it's going to require massive amounts of regulation and guardrails. It's not to say I don't think I agree entirely with Chuck. AI isn't going anywhere. It's here, and it's moving in a, again, I don't want to be predictive about it either, because I understand, like you've just said, the space is moving so fast. I can say right now that I don't believe AI can storyboard today. I don't want to say that it can't storyboard 5 years from now. If someone says, give me David Lean and E.T., like, what's that going to look like? Someone can basically, I'm not saying that it won't be able to do that, but it's certainly, I don't see indications that is possible right now. But I'm not working in the AI. I'm not working in the machine learning space as a scientist or a researcher. But I think education is a huge part of it, because you're going to have to educate the public at large, and you're going to have to educate policymakers, which means you have to educate legislators, which means you have to be in D.C. and you have to be on the state, local, and federal level, creating guardrails and protections around AI to protect American labor. It's a huge part of it, education. Go ahead.
All right, I will be very fast. 1, tech people are not necessarily the enemy. We're all humans. We're all working together. And it sounds like you have a good viewpoint on this whole situation. Great. 2, our sister crafts have built a lot of momentum. We need to capitalize on that momentum and keep moving the conversation forward. We haven't had, as a union, a lot of huge gains because our negotiations haven't happened yet. They happen next year. And also, this week, the Biden administration has started to create an AI task force that, again, it's the presidency, they can't legislate, but as these conversations are happening, there is national conversation, there is national movement. So we are moving in a direction, we just have to keep moving in that direction and keeping the conversation moving.
I hope this has helped see our point of view of where we're coming at it. Obviously, you can tell it's a complicated issue even within our walls, and we're sorting it out internally so we can have a very strong outward-facing presence on this.